DFS community. Welcome into Wildcard Weekend edition of one of the most accurate DFS shows in the industry. This is episode number 79 of the Adjusted Line Play Report, where we take a deep dive into the play in the trenches to determine game script and player outcomes. This show is presented by Zilla Fantasy Elite. I am your host, Todd Hoffman, and you can find myself over on Twitter at ToddZilla1337, and you can zilla Zilla Fantasy Elite over on Twitter at Zilla Fantasy. All right, folks, we're going to just dive right into the games this playoff weekend, so wild card weekend. We're just going to dive right in. We're going to go chronological order in terms of first game on the slate all the way through the game. So we have two Saturday games, one in the afternoon, one in the Saturday evening or Saturday night football. And then we'll have a early game on Sunday, a afternoon game on Sunday, and then a Sunday night football. And then the Rams and the Vikings play on Monday night football. So that's the slate. Every one of these is an island game, so we'll get in depth into some of the plays that we might expect to see here. So with that being said, we are treating this as one big giant 6-game slate. So the weekly total rank is based off of those 6 games and the 12 teams for the team implied totals. One more caveat. I didn't update the values from FTN to give all of the adjusted line play stuff because week 18 is really, there's so many backups and stuff playing, it's not indicative of how that team was playing when things actually mattered. So didn't want to update and have some false numbers in here. So we're using the values that were going into week 18 from all the play through week 17, if that makes sense. So let's look at the first game. Saturday afternoon, the Chargers are heading into Houston. It is a dome game. We have Chargers as a 3-point road favorite here on a 42.5 Vegas game total. That 42.5 Vegas game total is the worst out of the 6 games on this playoff slate. But that all of that being considered, the Chargers with their 22.75 team implied total is the 7th best out of the 12 teams. Even though they're favored, they're not even in the top half here of teams. And then Houston at 19.75 is the 10th ranked team on the playoff slate. So away team first, it is the Chargers, even though they're favored here. So looking at this, we have Houston's defense is really, really good. So they're number 2, and number 5. So green across the board on their defense, which makes me a little bit nervous just looking at that for the Chargers offense. But very first matchup here, we're looking at the adjusted sack rates for offense and defense. Chargers 23rd, Houston 2nd. Huge favor here for the defense. This is indicative that they should be able to generate some pressure and actually get some sacks here on the Chargers pass game while they are passing. So I'd expect Justin Herbert to be under a little bit of duress in this game. Needed to get the ball out a little bit quicker. If that's going to be the case, you're going to probably see a few more dump-offs to the running backs, a few more targets probably to Ladd McConkey. He's more of the short and intermediate guy in that offense. Wouldn't expect so many deep shots. So guys like Palmer and Quentin Johnston, deep shots are probably going to be rare in this particular matchup. So I wouldn't expect them to have great games, even though Quentin Johnston does seem like he can get some yak on some underneath stuff. I would expect this particular matchup to favor Ladd McConkey, the tight ends, and the running backs more than anybody else. That pass DVOA, Chargers actually 10th, which is good. They're in the green there, but Houston's still number 2 in the pass DVOA there. This is indicative that the Chargers need to get the ball out quick, and they're probably not going to be as effective or as efficient as they had been throughout the season in terms of what they do on a play-by-play basis compared to the average there. So they're probably going to be a little bit below average there in the pass game. So that doesn't look super great for them in that regards, but fortunately for them, they do have some pretty good people like McConkey, Quentin Johnston, that can do some stuff with the ball in their hands and get open. So it's not the end of the world in terms of how their offense is set up. On the run blocking side, excuse me, Chargers number 25 in the adjusted run blocking, which takes out quarterback stuff and all of that. Houston still number 2 in that regard, so this is a pretty big favor for Houston. I'd expect a lot of stuff behind the line of scrimmage here for tackles for loss, things like that, for the Chargers in the run game here, which is also not boding well for them, unfortunately for Dobbins and them. But they've had some injuries there, and maybe these numbers aren't as bad for the Chargers as you would expect. Based off of those injuries. But yeah, not looking good on paper. And then the DVOA, that includes everything, including the quarterback play and all of that. So a little bit better in that department for the Chargers at number 9. Houston a little bit worse at number 5. But as I have mentioned, they're green across the board. There's still a plus 14 favor for Houston here over the Chargers on defense. To me, this looks like the Chargers are probably going to struggle a little bit to score on offense. It's going to be dink and dunk, that type of stuff. They're probably going to stall out on a lot of drives. So Cameron Dicker, their kicker, is probably going to have quite a few field goal attempts in this. It is the playoffs, so you're going to see a little bit of extra effort to score points and whatnot. So I wouldn't be shocked to see over 3 field goal attempts here for Cameron Dicker in this game, just based off of what I'm seeing here. It looks like Chargers are going to struggle moving the ball, which probably means they're not going to score a ton of touchdowns. And when they do get into opponent's territory, it's probably going to stall out at some point, and they're going to be selling for field goals more than anything else. I'll keep that in mind. On the Houston side, we have red across the board on offense. So their green is all on defense. The red all on offense here, which was kind of surprising after last season. But Houston pass game, 27th in pass protection. Chargers number 4 there. Same ordeal as the other side of the ball. I'd expect CJ Stroud and company to be under duress in this. Lots of pressure, lots of sacks generated, and needing to get the ball out quick for Houston. So who's that going to be in that offense? I don't necessarily think that is going to be Nico Collins' strong suit. He's really good, more of a intermediate and deeper type of wide receiver, but he is their main guy there. Otherwise, I got Robert Woods and now Deontay Johnson, Xavier Hutchinson, who all kind of fill the ability to get open underneath and in the intermediate, which is probably going to benefit them more. You probably see a lot of dump offs to Joe Mixon, and then Schultz getting involved in the passing game there too. So keep that in mind. It doesn't look good in terms of getting the ball out quick. And then the DVOA matchup is atrocious. It's number 7 for the defense for the Chargers, number 25 for Houston. This is a red-green matchup. Those are the ones that we always want to kind of focus on. It's more of the extremes one way or the other. And based off of this, I'd say Houston's pass attack, not only will it be under pressure, they're really going to struggle moving the ball on offense through the air. This is not looking good for them. Keep in mind, I'm not up to date with the latest injuries and whatnot with the Chargers on their defensive front, but this is really, really bad on paper for Houston in their pass game. Now, the run game's a little bit different. Houston's still pretty bad, number 26 and number 27, but the Chargers are certainly not as effective in the run department on defense. They're number 27, so that's actually a slight favor there just on the running side. For Houston, they probably gain a few more extra yards than they're used to on offense in the run game there, but then the run DVOA, the Chargers number 17, Houston 27. It's a plus 10 favor for the defense, so kind of middle of the pack versus one of the worst in terms of run DVOA. Also not particularly great there for Houston, but if they're going to move the ball effectively, it's probably going to be more effective doing that on the ground. Combine that in with the fact that Houston's pass game is going to need to get the ball out quick. Joe Mixon looks probably like the best option here for Houston. He's going to be the most effective in terms of the offense running the ball, and then he's probably going to get quite a few targets thrown his direction, and he's probably going to end up being the one to carry this offense. And very similar to what I had said about the Chargers, I don't see Houston's offense moving the ball very well. If they're scoring, it's probably going to be more field goals and things like that. So this looks like it's going to be a pretty strong field goal fest here. If you're doing just the island game for this, I actually wouldn't mind starting both of these kickers in here. Certainly getting the defenses involved. It's just going to be probably a pretty ugly one. Mixon in there, and then take your poison between some other offensive players and then defense combo between two defenses, one defense, one field goal kicker, two field goal kickers, you name it. But I think that's how I would attack this game in DFS. That Vegas game total of 42.5 does seem high. If I could bet it, I would certainly bet the under on this particular Vegas game total. I just don't think that's going to fly. Even in the Dome, I don't think this is going to be a very high-scoring game based off of what we see here. All right, and the next game we have on the slate is Saturday evening's game. We got an AFC North rematch here. Pittsburgh heading into Baltimore. It is a 43.5 Vegas game total, so 1 point above this previous game. We have Baltimore actually as 9.5-point home favorites. That's pretty big there. So 9.5-point home favorites on that 43.5 Vegas game total gives them a 26.5 team implied total, which is third best out of the 12 teams. Pittsburgh all the way down at 17 is the worst team implied total on the first playoff slate here in Wildcard Weekend. 12th out of 12 there. That Vegas game total of 43.5 is the fifth best. The previously mentioned game was the worst for Saturday afternoon. All right, away team first. We have Pittsburgh, 24th in offensive pass protection. Baltimore 9th in the pass rush. This is a red-green matchup. Baltimore barely in the green, Pittsburgh barely in the red there. But generally when that's the case, those are opportunities for you to look at who's going to dominate. Certainly it looks like Baltimore should be able to generate a lot of pressure on Pittsburgh. They're going to need to get the ball out a little bit quicker. You might see a few more scrambles from Russell Wilson, getting flushed out of the pocket, things like that. Underneath passes. So Pat Freiermuth and Jalen Warren, Najee Harris getting more involved in the pass game. I think Pickens is back. This isn't necessarily boding well for him in terms of some of those ridiculous catches that he makes downfield. I don't know if they're going to have a ton of time to do a lot of that in this game. The DVOA, fortunately for Pittsburgh, is a little bit closer, 16th, so middle of the road there for Pittsburgh. Baltimore number 11, still a +5 in the favor of Baltimore, but a little bit closer there, which tells me they're going to, not have a ton of time to throw the ball, but their pass game may be somewhat effective, but not great in this particular matchup. Close enough maybe to call it a studs eat type of game. Pickens is really their only stud there, and I'm not sure with the way that he plays and what I'm seeing for the amount of time that Pittsburgh's going to have that he would really be benefiting in this, but it's kind of what that's showing. We have another 16-11 matchup for Pittsburgh in the run blocking, so just looking at the run game, this tells me it's pretty evenly matched, slightly in the favor of the defense. So if they had a stud back there at running back, I would be a little bit more confident in somebody having a good game. This doesn't look particularly great, especially when you take into consideration the offensive run DVOA. 16, Baltimore number 4 in that regard. They're +12 to the defense there. So this is telling me Pittsburgh really going to need to get the ball out quick. Not a great matchup on the pass game, and then getting into the run game, also not great there, below average at best. Wouldn't expect a lot of points here. Drives stalling out. They did kick a lot of field goals during the regular season. I would expect that to continue here, as they're not going to be able to find the end zone very often in this. And congrats to Vegas. This doesn't look great. So they have Pittsburgh already down at the worst team implied total so far, or of this playoff weekend. So Baltimore side, offense, they're green across the board. They're number 4 in pass protection. Pittsburgh actually number 25 in the pass rush. That's a red-green matchup in the favor of the offense here. So this tells me not going to get sacked a lot. Pittsburgh maybe doesn't generate a lot of pressure. They're certainly not getting sacks with their adjusted sack rate. So Lamar may have some time to throw the ball. That's always going to be good for everybody when that's the case. Zay Flowers might be the biggest beneficiary of there, because I think he is their number 1 target on a lot of their plays. It just allows him to get open a little bit more. I know he was banged up kind of coming into this week, so pay attention to that. The pass DVOA is a little bit closer, 13th for Pittsburgh, so a little bit above average, but Baltimore number 1 in the offensive pass DVOA. With the time to throw and a +12 difference in the pass DVOA category to the offense, I'd expect the pass game to be very good. Like I said, kind of pay attention to Zay Flowers. If that's the case and he's banged up or he's not going to play, I think Rashad Bateman in these scenarios would actually be pretty good, along with Andrews and Isaiah Likely being big beneficiaries if he's out. Now in the run game, it's a little bit closer. Baltimore number 3 and number 1. Pittsburgh number 5 and number 11. This is kind of a studs eat scenario for the run blocking. I do like Derrick Henry, and I think he is a stud yet. So I think he can overcome a matchup like this to have a good game. And then the run DVOA is actually a +10 in the favor of the offense, which bodes well for them being able to run pretty well in this game. So combined with the pass game being very efficient, the run game looks like it'll be pretty effective. Derrick Henry, I don't think necessarily has a blow-up game in this spot, but if Pittsburgh is really having difficulties moving the ball and Baltimore gets up quick, part of that is going to be because of Derrick Henry. But if they do get up quick, they're going to lean on Derrick Henry, and he's probably going to just, absolutely obliterate them at that point. I think that's how he hits a ceiling type game in this. But if we're playing DFS purposes, Pittsburgh kicker looks like a very good option, and then getting a lot of the Baltimore offense. Derrick Henry, Lamar, probably going to want to find somebody cheap from Pittsburgh. Potentially, the kicker should be an option, but then Baltimore, you're going to be able to get in some of those studs on that side. Defense, maybe if you want a cheaper option for Baltimore, also an option. Or if you think they're going to be up big, maybe Justice Hill or somebody runs one in, and then you get 6 points on a touchdown via that. But really like the Vegas line. Looks appropriate. I think Baltimore does score a lot more points than Pittsburgh in this, so I'm fine with all of that aspects. All right, getting into the Sunday games now. We have the early game on Sunday. Denver heading into Buffalo. There's also a pretty big line at 8.5-point home favorites for Buffalo. It's a 47-point Vegas game total, which is the second best out of the 6 teams on the slate. That 8.5-point favorite for Buffalo gives them a 27.75 team implied total. Number 1 out of the playoff slate here in Denver at 19.25 is the second worst at 11 out of the 12 teams. Now on the Denver side, they're very good about not taking sacks. They're number 3 in offensive pass protection. Buffalo 19th. Wouldn't expect anything to change here. Denver probably has a decent amount of time to throw. Considering their offensive scheme, I wouldn't expect them to be under a lot of pressure. Buffalo's already below average in terms of adjusted sack rate. So I'd expect Denver to have a pretty decent amount of time to throw in this, which is boding well, for their offensive prospects. The DVOA aspect, Denver 20th, so below average there. Buffalo 12th, a little bit above average. Slight favor here for Buffalo, but nothing too crazy. I think Denver's best pass option has been Sutton pretty much all season, especially when they got time to throw, within their normal context of their offense. I think he's going to get heavily involved there. We've seen Mims come alive the last few weeks, so keep an eye on that as well. Now the run game, Denver number 12, Buffalo number 7 in just the run categories here. So based off of this, slight favor for Buffalo, and then the run DVOA is a big favor for Buffalo, red-green matchup. So Denver 23rd, Buffalo number 7 again in the run DVOA. This is telling me Buffalo should be very, very good against the run here. Denver's on offense, so this run game looks like it's not going to be super effective. If the Denver expects to move the ball, it's probably going to be via the air, getting some time to throw, and then the run game maybe lets them down a little bit. Now, it's kind of roll the dice in terms of who the heck is going to actually be playing for Denver. Audric Estime, Javonte Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin. It seems like McLaughlin's actually the lead back there now, but this isn't looking good for any of those 3. They're in a 3-way committee. I wouldn't want to play any of them in DFS, and I don't think any of them has a particularly good game here against Buffalo. If Denver is moving the ball, it's going to be via the air. Situations where maybe the pass game's a little bit more effective and the run game looks like a poor option. I always start looking at the kickers in DFS for island games because he's probably going to be heavily involved there. But pay attention to weather. Buffalo can be kind of crazy this time of year. Now on the Buffalo side, it gets a little interesting. It's pretty much green against green, so strength against strength. Buffalo number 1 in offensive pass protection. Denver number 1 in the defensive pass rush. So they've absolutely dominated there. They have the most sacks and I believe the most pressures in the NFL this season. I believe I saw they were number 1 in both of those categories, but Buffalo doesn't take a lot of sacks. They are number 1 in that category, but I'd expect them to be under a little bit more duress than they're perhaps used to, which is probably going to lead to a few more Josh Allen scrambles and him getting the ball out a little bit quicker. It's going to be a little bit better probably for Khalil Shakir and guys running those underneath routes. Perhaps the tight ends, getting James Cook more involved, Ray Davis, Ty Johnson. Those guys could all get a little bit more involved there based off of needing to get the ball out a little bit quicker. And then the DVOA, Buffalo number 2, Denver number 6, nothing to write home about. That's really more of a studs eat scenario. I don't really think Buffalo has any studs at this point. Cooper seems past his prime. Keon Coleman not quite there. And then Khalil Shakir, probably been their best and most consistent wide receiver this season, is not a stud. So not really favoring anyone here other than Khalil Shakir, I think, because he's a little bit better at the underneath, quicker stuff. He's going to get more involved. You might see the tight ends and the running backs get more involved there in the pass game. But does look like Buffalo maybe struggles a little bit compared to what they're used to. Could lead to more Josh Allen rush attempts. On the running side, pretty even. Can't get much more even than this. Number 4 on the run blocking categories for offense and defense. And then the run DVOA, Buffalo 3, Denver number 2. Like I said, can't get much closer than that. Usually I'll say studs eat in these scenarios. I don't necessarily think Buffalo has any studs at running back. James Cook, Ray Davis, and Ty Johnson are all pretty decent in their own right, but not studs. So in a matchup like this, I probably say Buffalo struggles a little bit more than they're used to on offense. You know, both pass and run game aren't going to be as effective as they have been having it most of the season because Denver's defense is that good. I expect this to be a little bit tighter of a game than Vegas is perhaps showing here. Denver's pass game could maybe get the ball moving a little bit, overcome some of that bad rush categories there. The rush category 12-7 isn't terrible. I just think Denver will probably be able to keep this score within the 8.5. I expect it to be a little bit tighter. I don't necessarily expect a lot of points in this either. The only way that they maybe score that many points, or Buffalo with 28, I don't think that's, I would bet the under on that. Denver at 19, it doesn't look great, but you know, with time to throw, that's always a quicker way to get the ball down the field. They could put up some points and score a little bit more than that, but I don't see Buffalo putting up 28 points against this Denver defense. In fact, I think this is going to be pretty close, and it might be a sweat for Buffalo to win. Based off of what I see on paper, Buffalo should win, but it might end up being super close and a sweat for any of the Buffalo fans. So I'm not going to do the upset alert, but it should be closer than people expect. All right, now we have the Sunday afternoon game. Green Bay heading into Philadelphia. This is a 45.5 Vegas game total. This is the 4th best out of the 6 teams. Philly favored by 4.5 at home. That gives them a 25-point team implied total, 4th best on this out of 12 teams. Green Bay at 20.5 is ranked 9th best. Green Bay is actually green across the board in all of their offensive categories. Number 2 in pass protection, so they're not taking a lot of sacks. Number 3 in pass DVOA, so been very effective there. Philadelphia, number 8 in the defensive pass rush. Number 3 in the pass DVOA. Philadelphia is really bad at the beginning of the season. They've really turned it around. Their defense is now really clicking. Based off of this, I think Green Bay is going to, be under a little bit more duress than they're perhaps used to in this. I think Philadelphia is really coming into it. And then it's more of a studs eat scenario for their wide receivers. They don't really have any studs. It's just going to be split between Wicks and Dobbs, who's kind of banged up, and then Jaden Reed, and probably the tight ends getting involved, especially if they're going to be under duress. I expect Tucker Kraft and Jaden Reed to get more run and more targets in a game like this, along with Josh Jacobs, where, hey, it's just not clicking. We need to get what we can. We'll take the 6-7 yards that we get from passing it to Kraft or Reed or Josh Jacobs and then try to make our offense work through that. Now the run game, the run blocking, when you're looking just at the running, Green Bay slightly better, number 9 versus 13 on defense. And then the run DVOA, Green Bay very good at number 4, but Philadelphia is number 1 in the run DVOA category. So Green Bay probably going to find it a little bit of tough sledding in the run game. It's an otherwise studs eat scenario. I've never been a Josh Jacobs fan, but the guy does have very good vision in the backfield. He's just not very athletic. Can he overcome a situation like that? We'll see. It just doesn't bode well. Pretty evenly matched stuff here. I think Green Bay just struggles a little bit compared to what they're used to on offense in this. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be terrible. Just a little bit worse than they have been against some of these otherwise not as good teams as Philadelphia. Now on the Philadelphia side, they're 30th in offensive pass protection, so they take a lot of sacks back there. Green Bay middle of the pack at 16. Wouldn't really, nothing really to write home about here with Green Bay kind of being an average team there. Philadelphia is just going to be a standard day at the office in terms of them taking sacks and any sort of the pass protection stuff. The pass DVOA, Green Bay actually inside the top 10 at number 10, Philadelphia 14th. Slight favor for Green Bay here. Really more of a studs eat scenario and needing to get the ball out maybe a little bit quicker just because that offensive line hasn't been good. That's going to benefit more of Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, and the tight end Dallas Goedert. I'd expect them to be the most involved in the pass game. Probably leaving Devonta Smith a little bit as like the third wheel, so to speak, in that pass game this week. Now in the run game, Philadelphia number 19, Green Bay number 9 in stopping the run. That's pretty hefty favor for Green Bay. I expect them to be able to get some penetration, maybe disrupt the backfield back there, get Barkley behind the line of scrimmage a few times in this matchup based off of this. But then that run DVOA is a studs eat scenario, number 6 for Green Bay, number 5 for Philly. In those situations, I do like to say studs eat, and Barkley is certainly that. So can he overcome a matchup like this? Yes, I believe he can. Just be aware he's probably going to have a very volatile game where you see him get stuffed behind the line of scrimmage, 2-yard loss, 3-yard loss, boom, 8-yard gain. Okay, 1-yard loss, boom, 7-yard gain. 3-yard loss. Okay, now it's an 11-yard gain. It's going to be probably more of a game like that where it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back type of ordeal there. So kind of an interesting one here. I think 4.5 feels about appropriate. I expect Green Bay to struggle a little bit compared to what they're used to, but still be able to move the ball against Philly. Their defense is pretty solid. And then Philadelphia kind of in a similar situation where they do have studs that can overcome on these scenarios and, you know, kind of deal with what they're dealt with being under pressure and whatnot. So I think this is going to be a close game. Nothing too crazy here that I'm going to say for any sort of betting markets on this. It's just kind of, this is going to be a good playoff football game from the looks of it. Wouldn't be shocked if Green Bay ends up winning this, but based out of this, I think Barkley and Jacobs are going to end up with the best games because they're probably going to get involved in the pass game with being under duress a little bit and also being studs eat kind of scenarios in the run game. All right, with just 2 games left here. The Sunday night game, Washington heading into Tampa Bay. This is a 50.5 Vegas game total. It's either 50 or 50.5, depending on where you go. Most of the main ones that people use are at 50.5. Some of the more underground ones are 50. But I put 50.5 on here. Tampa Bay favored by 3 at home. They just gave them the standard, hey, you're the home team, you get a 3-point bump. They say these teams are otherwise perfectly evenly matched. With the 3-point home favorite for Tampa Bay on a 50.5 Vegas game total, that gives them a 26.75 team implied total. That is the second best on the entire playoff slate this weekend. Washington at 23.75 is the 6th best out of 12 teams. Washington, pass protection number 21. Tampa Bay, 10th in the pass rush category, so they are capable of generating some pressure and some sacks. Washington known to give up a few sacks here and there. I'd expect the ball to need to get out a little bit quicker here and there in this game, which is going to benefit the tight ends, running backs, and underneath routes. So I'd say Olamide Zaccheaus, Zach Ertz, and Austin Eckler, and to a lesser extent, Brian Robinson will get involved in the pass game in this, and they should be very effective. So Tampa Bay, whatever defense that they're playing, it gives up a lot of yards in the pass game. Washington is very explosive in that category, so despite the time maybe needed to get the ball out, it does look like Washington will be very effective when they do pass it. I expect them to be explosive, have explosive plays here. Olamide Zaccheaus, even McLaurin will probably have his shot to be pretty good in this environment, but this is really indicative that Jaden Daniels should be able to be very effective when he does drop back to pass. Run blocking side, Washington, number 20, Tampa Bay, number 8. They've really been pretty good in this category on defense for Tampa Bay for a while now. So they're number 8 across the board on their defensive categories. Washington, 28th in the run blocking, but number 8 in the run DVOA. So more of a studs eat scenario for Washington. Brian Robinson and Eckler at this stage, I don't think are those types of players. So kind of a standard day at the office, probably a little bit subpar in terms of getting hit in the backfield quite often. If Washington's going to move the ball, it's probably going to be a lot more effective when it's through the air. I'd expect that to be the case. Running backs probably get involved in the pass game as well. So that's, I think, Washington and how their game is going to go is moving the ball via the air in this matchup. Now, Tampa Bay, they're 17th in pass protection, Washington 11th. Nothing really to write home about. Standard day at the office, I say, for Baker Mayfield in this. Pass DVOA, though, Tampa Bay number 7, Washington 20th. I'd expect Tampa Bay to be able to be very explosive in this. They're going to have an okay amount of time to throw the ball, so wheels up probably for Mike Evans. I don't think he will be subdued in this. And we probably see a pretty solid matchup from McMillan in this as well. He's really come on in the later part of the season. On the run blocking side, that's really where it's at, and Tampa Bay should thrive here. Number 2 for Tampa Bay, 23rd for Washington's defense. This is a red-green matchup in the favor of Tampa Bay, plus 21. Really large gap. I'd expect a lot of positive plays and a lot of really big chunk gains. And then the run DVOA, they're just going to be better than average by quite a bit in any given scenario. I'd expect Tampa Bay to be able to dominate on the ground, and we've really seen Bucky Irving kind of take over that backfield. So I think he's going to have a solid matchup here as well. So kind of the usual culprits for Tampa Bay. It looks like Tampa Bay should be able to score some points in this. If Washington's going to keep up, they're going to be doing it through the air. 50.5 seems plausible. Tampa Bay scoring 27 does seem likely. Washington scoring 24 by the end of the game also seems likely. So I actually don't hate the over in this, but it is playoff football. Defenses can show up and all of a sudden, do a lot better than you're expecting. But the 50.5 is a pretty solid line, I think. All right, and the final matchup, Monday Night Football, we have the Minnesota Vikings heading into the Los Angeles Rams Stadium for the final playoff game here in Wildcard Weekend. This is a 47-point Vegas game total. It's tied for second that is the second best one on the slate, according to some of the Vegas sites on Tuesday when this is being recorded. So Minnesota is actually 1.5-point road favorites here. 24.25 for their team implied total. It is the 6th best on the main slate or on the playoff slate. And then the Rams at 22.75 are the 7th best. Projecting a very close game here. Rams not favored at home, though. On the Minnesota side, they're number 22 in the pass protection. The Rams 22nd. This is kind of an even matchup here. Minnesota might find a little bit more time than they're used to throw the ball in this. which is good for them based off of what we see on paper. But I know the Rams do generate some pressure on the quarterback. The pass DVOA, though, Minnesota number 9, the Rams 21st. Rams are kind of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in terms of when their defense shows up. So I believe Darnold had a pretty solid game when they played earlier in the season. The Rams did win that. Remember, there's a face mask at the end in the end zone that they didn't call. They just said Sam Darnold got sacked, and Minnesota lost that game. But he, I think, did perform all right. Justin Jefferson had a big game, and based off of what I see here, it looks like he should be pretty solid. We should see Jordan Addison and Hawkinson also have pretty solid games here. I just think their pass game looks like it's going to thrive. And then the run game, Minnesota number 11 in run blocking, the Rams 24th in stopping the run. Pretty big favor here for Minnesota. I expect a lot of positive yardage to be had. And then the run DVOAs are dead even at 20 apiece. In these scenarios, I say studs eat. Aaron Jones does look pretty good yet, despite being 30. I don't know if he's necessarily a stud, but I think he can overcome a matchup like this that's otherwise pretty evenly matched. Minnesota should be fine scoring some points here against the Rams in this situation. Can they do it on the road? We'll see. On the Rams side, number 6 in pass protection, so not taking a lot of sacks. Minnesota actually 17th in the pass rush category, so they don't get a ton of sacks. They're kind of middle of the pack there, probably when they are getting them, maybe in scenarios where you'd expect them. They're just middle of the pack. I wouldn't expect a lot of pressure or a lot of sacks necessarily against the Rams in this particular game. Based off of this, I wouldn't expect the sacks. The pressures are a different story just because Brian Flores runs such a weird defense for most people. You know, are they bringing people? Are they not? They blitz a lot. You could have a little bit more pressure here than this number would suggest. The pass DVOA, Rams number 12, Minnesota actually number 1 in the pass DVOA. It's kind of been a defense that you've targeted for your wide receivers because they end up getting a lot of yardage. It seems like in the later portions of the game when Minnesota's already winning, they do allow a lot of like garbage time stuff to happen. But otherwise, their pass DVOA is number 1. The Rams are number 12. Kind of indicative that while the Rams may have time, they're going to have to be a little bit more dink and dunk to move the ball down the field. They're not going to be super explosive. Obviously, they have Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, who are very good in that department. I'd expect that to continue in a game matchup like this. Now on the run side, the Rams number 8 in run blocking, Minnesota number 14. Slight favor there for the Rams. Wouldn't expect a lot of like hit in the backfield type stuff for the Rams, but also just kind of a standard day at the office. And then the run DVOA, Minnesota's been very good in that category all season. They're number 3, the Rams number 11. So Rams kind of favored in the adjusted line play stuff with terms of running back efficiency and the quarterback sack rates. And then the run DVOA, where you're looking at how they perform against the average play in that scenario and adjusting for the defense. Minnesota's been very good in that regard, and the Rams, a little bit above average for that. So it really kind of favors Minnesota's defense. Based on this, I do see Minnesota maybe having the better offense. Rams may be struggling a little bit. I do agree with the Vegas line. Minnesota should probably be favored in this, considering you get a 3-point home favorite. They're basically saying Minnesota is a 4.5 point better team than the Rams, and that's kind of what I'm seeing on this. Vegas game total, I think, is fine at 47. That's a pretty solid mark. Nothing really to comment on that. Anyway, that's going to do it for this playoff slate. Hopefully you can go take this information and figure out what bets you need to play, what prop bets you need to play for this playoff series. I think this is really when you can make some money on your season, is watching this and getting some of those prop bets or betting the games here. I don't think there's anything necessarily egregious with who's favored or who's not. We may see some upsets, but based off of what I saw there, I think Vegas did a pretty good job of setting these game totals and the line for a lot of them. All right, that's going to do it, folks. Go out there. Let's win some money together. Peace.